last month, with the unemployment rate at 4.7%. Joining the conversation all morning long this morning, Fox News contributor Liz Peek and Michael Lee strategy founder Michael Lee. It is great to see everybody this morning. Thank you so much for being here. Liz Peek, 2022 and for 2024, Kamala Harris was out campaigning for Terry McAuliffe, and she said, look, what happens here in Virginia is going to have an impact on 2022. Meanwhile, the economic story is focused on the Federal Reserve and the supply shortages, Michael Lee. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg saying that the supply chain crunch is not ending anytime soon. He says the crisis could last as long as the pandemic. Your thoughts on whether or not this is a topic that the Fed brings up tomorrow in its two-day meeting when we hear that press conference come Wednesday?
Yeah, well, look, I think supply chains fixing themselves was the crux of the transitory inflation argument. And so they are clearly not. And when you have the head of the Department of Transportation taking 2 months off in the midst of one of the most unique crises in the history of our country, it doesn't seem like there's any relief in sight. And it looks like cost pressures are going to continue to increase. I think the Fed, depending on how their personal portfolios are positioned, are going to make some announcements this week. I don't think they want to I don't think they want to rock the market with anything they say. So it's it's what I consider verbal karate out of the Fed. We're going to get news that the taper is going to dissipate. But all this is going on against a backdrop against some spectacular earnings. We were expecting 25% earnings growth at the end of on June 30th, on September 30th, we were looking at 27% earnings growth, and now we're coming in at just under 37% earnings growth. So this performance so far above and beyond analyst estimates and expectations, and the continually raising of earnings growth rates since the depths of the pandemic has been the story. And I think it's the reason why markets continue to bang down the doors of new highs on a daily basis.
Yeah, I mean, then there's the price of oil, Michael. Goldman Sachs saying that the bull market in oil is not going anywhere. And then there's a report in the Journal. Analysts and traders are saying that investors are buying oil on inflation fears, helping to drive up the surge. Take a look at where we are on oil, and let me get your take on whether or not this cuts into economic growth, or is this an opportunity for investors to buy oil, as the expectations seem to be it's going to continue going up. It's at 84.36 this morning.
Yeah, well, look, the cost of oil has skyrocketed since the election, and that's basically because you send a signal to the market when you shut down the Keystone Pipeline. Immediately, you ban fracking on federal land or new fracking on federal land. You basically say, look, the U.S. is not going to become energy independent. We're going to be reliant on other countries, and boom, the price goes through the roof. And you combine that with increased demand. This drives the cost of everything up and down the supply chain. It's a tax on ordinary Americans. In terms of investing in this, I think some of these big name oil companies, your Chevrons, your Exxons, that's a good way to play this. I thought throughout the pandemic that most of their dividends would be safe, and now that we've seen a complete recovery in prices, in oil prices, those are good quality name stocks to own that haven't moved as much as the price of oil. So you can still buy and own those now. And then there's the oil services sector.
All right,
Maria.
Slip in a short. Yep. Yeah, go ahead, Liz. Wall Street top investors watching your money as the major indices are in uncharted territory once again this morning. Joining me right now is Bulltick Capital Markets Chief Strategist Catherine Rooney Vera, Brig Macadam Limited founding partner Greg Swenson, and Michael Lee strategy founder Michael Lee. Great to see everybody this morning. Thank you so much for being here. Catherine, kicking things off with you on this first day of November for markets. We got a strong performance underway. The Federal Reserve will kick off its two-day policy meeting tomorrow. Chairman Jay Powell is expected to announce a taper timeline. As we go into that meeting, what are you thinking in terms of the Fed scaling back the purchases as early as this month, with the Dow Industrials right now showing a triple-digit move, opening at a record high this morning, likely?
Right. Yeah, the Fed is going to do exactly, Maria, what the market expects it to do. The Fed is a market pleaser. I can't imagine a scenario where they surprise either to the up or the downside with regard to the quantity of asset purchases that they plan to taper starting this week.
What I want to ask you about some of that inflation as it relates to oil. I've got a Goldman Sachs report here, and Goldman sees oil market deficit running at 2.5 million barrels per day. Goldman sees oil bull remains intact, affirms Brent at $90 a barrel target. The Journal is out with a story this morning saying that investors are buying oil as well. The cost right now in terms of crude oil, just below $84 a barrel. What's the impact?
Yeah, look, this passed costs on to everything we do across the entire country, particularly those at the lower spectrum of income, people that have to drive a long way to go to work, the truckers driving across the country, of which there's a shortage of. So look, we are in a crux of major problems going on right now with a lot of logistical problems causing price spikes across everything that we see and do. And at the helm, you have Mayor Pete, who has no real accomplishments, is basically sitting in his position for political favors. And you have a Biden administration waging war on fossil fuels. They could easily fix this by releasing the strategic petroleum reserves, reopening the Keystone Pipeline, and there's a lot of other ways they could tackle this, but they're choosing not to.
Yeah, and that collectively is pushing prices up. And you're talking about gasoline being up 40% or so over the last year. There's a buying opportunity there for somebody in terms of buying oil, and that's what the Journal is saying people are doing. Great word on one of the issues has been schools, because Terry McAuliffe made that ridiculous comment that parents have no right to know or to be involved in what their kids are learning. That really turned a number of women, suburban women, off, and mothers, because of course they need to be involved in their kids' schooling. So it was really Virginians focusing on what's important to their families, whether it be that grocery tax that Liz brings up and inflation, or what their kids are learning in schools.
Yeah, look, the pandemic and a lot of this online learning at home really raised attention to a lot of the things going on inside the classroom that I think many parents had no idea about. And as soon as they start getting involved and pushing back against the left's assault on American values and pushing all sorts of crazy nonsense, CRT and other stuff in schools, you got Merrick Garland labeling parents as domestic terrorists, and then you had the horrific incidences that happened in Loudoun County in the bathrooms there. So this is kind of a perfect storm against Terry McAuliffe, and he's now underperforming Joe Biden amongst independents in his own state by over 20 points. So look, tomorrow some fireworks are going to happen tomorrow night, and hopefully on Wednesday we see a Republican sweep.
Yeah, and Democrats are getting panicked because they want to get their spending through. We'll see what the moderates do after seeing the Virginia results. Does that cause them to walk away from that spending plans and the vote that she's looking for? All right, we're going to watch